met her in the fall. He took her to a movie, and when they done it all, he took her.
Hello and welcome to the Fabulous Picture Show. I'm Amanda Palmer, and this week we have South African filmmaker Ralph Ziman will be screening his post-apartheid look at Johannesburg's underground. It's called Gangster's Paradise, Jerusalema.
It's about a kind of Robin Hood character.
I'm a legitimate businessman providing shelter for the poor and disenfranchised.
Well, kind of Robin Hood. And the director describes the advantages of filming on the chaotic streets of Johannesburg.
People asked how we did it, we turned the camera on. That was lucky.
Also on the show, a dozen years ago with Festen, director Thomas Vinterberg served up a cinematic feast. And now with Submarino,
Yeah.
he's gone back for seconds.
But first, computer graphics and 3D technology have pretty much killed off traditional animation, or have they? Apparently, Sylvain Chaumet didn't get that memo.
Sylvain Chaumet's The Illusionist is animated cinema of exceptional beauty and a celebration of the light and landscapes of Scotland.
All our teams were there when they were shooting the backgrounds, drawing them and painting them and putting the lights on it. Because what I wanted to do with this film is actually to have always a movement in the light.
The environment is intrinsic to the poetry of the story, and animation does allow you a kind of control. There are street scenes that you could go out still today and you would recognize, but they're all slightly shifted.
The film is based on a screenplay by the late French comedy maestro Jacques Tati.
Hello.
Set in the 1950s, it's about two lost characters who find peace and purpose in each other. A young girl on the verge of becoming a woman, and an aging, out-of-fashion magician struggling to keep his audience in this new era of TV and rock and roll. In order to maintain the girl's illusion that magic is real, the magician secretly works humiliating jobs to provide her with the womanly accessories she begins to crave. The Illusionist recalls Jacques Tati's pet themes: rampant consumerism, frivolous innovation, and the headlong pace of change in post-war France. Tati followed his own muse, indifferent to cinematic trends of the day.
He wouldn't make any compromise. He had a kind of a vision like a bit of an anarchist. He could have done many other films, had much more money and never be poor, because he ended really poor and very bitter at the end of his life. But just because he wanted to keep his integrity. I'm trying to do the same.
Chaumet premiered his acclaimed first feature, Belleville Rendezvous, in Edinburgh back in 2003. He fell in love with the city and set up an animation studio there to create The Illusionist. But in today's digital world, experienced hand-drawn animators have become a rare species.
Not a lot of 2D movies are made now, so it was a constant, huge battle to recruit the talent. But even allowing for that too, the demands of the character style that Sylvain likes are very unusual. Even if you compare it to classic Disney, the line is much more complex.
Chaumet's distinctive style has more in common with old-school Disney than today's CGI blockbusters.
New toys!
But then he's always preferred pencils to pixels.
What I was frustrated with, when I was seeing what was done in animation, being an animator myself, and the things you can do with animation, and this frustration made me, go into a direction when, most people at the beginning were saying, you're mad, nobody's going to want to see this kind of thing.
Ketchup?
With Festen or The Celebration, he made the first and possibly the best of all the Dogma films. But in recent years, Thomas Vinterberg, he struggled to match that early success. But with his latest film, his fans might have cause for new celebration.
I farens og Helligåndens ånd. Siger man det der? Jeg vil gøre vel. Kæft.
Submarino traces the tragic journey of two brothers, taken from their alcoholic mother and raised separately.
Det er din storebror. Jeg vil godt lige have fat i det.
Based on a novel, it's about the incessant worry that comes with taking care of children.
Skal du have morgenmad?
Ja.
Especially when you've got a few problems of your own.
Det er sgu ikke, Martin.
Det gør ikke noget. Jeg vil bare gerne have madpakke med.
Du får en madpakke med i morgen. Okay?
This constant fear of not performing well as a parent, I guess is universal.
Brother Nick, an alcoholic, lives a twilight existence, untethered to anything or anyone.
He's kind of like a monk who takes away everything in his life, material things, emotional things, and he doesn't do anything for himself. But there's one thing he can't let go, and that's the brother, and that's kind of the core of him.
In Submarino, as in his previous films, Danish director Thomas Vinterberg began with the characters.
This is not about the working class of Denmark, but about those who dropped out of the working class and fell further down. And down there, they're just not as socially capable and ready. It's more honest, more direct, more to the point.
It's the opposite of Vinterberg's early masterpiece, Festen, about a privileged family living in the bubble of facade and denial.
In Festen, there was a lot of games, a lot of secrets, a lot of hiding away, a lot of lies.
Men allerførst vil jeg gerne holde en lille tale, og jeg har valgt at kalde den, når far skulle i bad.
As the very first film to obey the famous Dogma 95 manifesto.
Når han skulle det, så tog han Linda og jeg ind på hans kontor først, sjovt nok. Der var lige noget, han skulle ordne først.
It abstained from such cinematic trickery as music or lights.
Og så lagde han os på den grønne briks, som nu er smidt ud, og voldtog os, udnyttede os, seksuelt havde sex med sin kære små.
And in less than a decade, Dogma spawned some real gems. But the vogue for stripped-down cinema seems to have passed.
I don't think we will ever know if Dogma is dead. Because if someone makes a Dogma film, it's alive again. But at the moment, there's no activity. It's a fish, and it's lying very still on the shore, and maybe there's a little bit of movement in the tail. We don't know.
Nick? Ja. Lille lort. Så kan du ud med også, mand.
Hey, Bug. Don't be back late.
I know.
Come give us a hug before you go. Hugs.
Nick and Jules are married.
Hug her, that's what she's there for.
They have 2 children from the same biological dad.
Each of my moms had a kid with your sperm.
Liking both of them.
Liking gay.
When the kids decide to meet this mysterious donor,
he's not a father.
He's our sperm donor.
Complications ensue.
Oh, wow. Okay.
What I loved about it was it had nothing to do with what gender we were.
Go easy on the wine, hun. It's daytime. Okay. Same goes for the micromanaging. Okay.
There was no sense of we're on a mission, there's a message, this is the new definition of the modern family.
It required me to go much deeper into the things that in the end I feel like are really the most important things in the film, which are the psychological issues and the emotional issues and the issues that are just kind of universal and common to anybody, regardless of gender. If there was an agenda, if there was like a challenge in the film that was, political in any way, it was to be not political.
Did you always know that
Yes.
that you wanted to be in the food services industry?
I always liked food.
Oh, yeah.
The first thing I really look for is what actor I'm going to put in that role. Julianne has a lot of comic potential.
I just keep seeing my kids' expressions in your face.
Really?
Really?
And Annette Bening, before I cast her, I just would laugh thinking about her saying some of these lines.
How'd you two meet?
I was a resident, and Jules had an emergency.
My tongue was numb.
And I told her to relax,
And then
my tongue started working again.
In part 2, we're screening Gangster's Paradise, Jerusalema. I have the filmmaker, the writer, director here. This is Ralph Ziman. A fantastic film and also pretty scary.
Yeah, it was. It's, I mean, a lot of what you see in the film was actually shot for real. When you see the scenes of police busting buildings, we would literally grab our cameras and run around after them.
You based it on somebody, a gangster who you'd met in real life.
Yeah, Lucky was based on a real guy who was running a syndicate, and he was stealing high-rise blocks in inner city Johannesburg. At the time, they'd estimated he'd taken over about 20 buildings.
Incredible. He's a real entrepreneur. Come back in part 2 to learn some more.
He met her in the fall.
Hello everybody, welcome to this screening of Gangster's Paradise, Jerusalema. Please welcome the filmmaker here. This is Ralph Ziman.
Good to be here. Thank you all for coming. Thanks for coming to see my movie. It's a film about what's become of inner city Johannesburg, how it's become a no-go area, and how it's become this really crime-infested place. And hopefully it'll give people an insight.
It's very much a look at post-apartheid South Africa. I know you're going to enjoy this, and it's going to be a great Q&A. See you then. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Soweto-born Lucky Kunane is a good boy.
It is our sincere pleasure to offer you a place at our School of Business Studies in
with big plans for the future. Sadly, washing cars leaves him a few rand short. And coveting the flash lifestyle of bad boy Nazareth.
He has the most money, the biggest cars, and any woman he wants.
He tries his hand at hijacking them instead. Despite his attempts at clean living, Lucky ends up in the notorious Hillbrow district of Johannesburg with sharp clothes, a posh girlfriend.
I guess when you're rich, poverty seems glamorous.
And a flourishing property racket.
I'm a legitimate businessman, providing shelter for the poor and disenfranchised.
A self-styled African Robin Hood, he claims he's doing it all for the little people.
I was told you control 20 high-rise buildings in the Hillbrow and Joburg Park area.
I'm just in the business of making a better life for all.
Directed by longtime music video maker Ralph Ziman, the film takes an unflinching look at the criminal face of post-apartheid South Africa.
You want me to allow you to pimp and deal from my buildings?
Brother, I prefer to see it as a free enterprise zone.
Just tell me this. Why did you come here?
It's fine to hate us, while you sit there on your asses waiting for your entitlement from Mandela. If you think he's going to come and part the Dead Sea and lead you to our promised land, you are wrong, brother.
Were you living in South Africa when apartheid ended in 1994?
I'd been living abroad. I went back from 91 to 94 I just felt like I didn't want to be watching the end of apartheid, you know, from my couch in London.
One of the interesting things about Ralph is that he had started off as a news cameraman in South Africa, so you'd seen a fairly hairy side of South Africa already.
Some of the early footage in the film was stuff we'd shot. Actually, for real, we'd taken a 35mm camera and shot a lot of the transitional period.
1994. Freedom. The new South Africa.
It was an interesting time just having that kind of footage and that feeling that was in the country at the moment, you know, that the elation of it.
So what compelled you about this story? Why did you want to tell this one in particular?
There'd been this incredible crime tsunami which had come in the wake of the end of apartheid, which turned Johannesburg increment by increment into, you know, one of the most dangerous cities in the world and certainly one of the most crime-ridden cities. I really wanted to make a film which dealt with crime. I wanted to try and understand the roots of it and where it was coming from. I came across the story about buildings in inner city Johannesburg that were being hijacked by a syndicate. This particular guy had taken over, nobody really knew, something in the region of 30 or 40. He was collecting, they said, between 10 and 20 million rand a month in cash, which is probably £1 million or something.
Look at this. The tenants can clean up. Tell them first month is for free.
The real character was Stephen.
Stephen, yeah. He was being called the Hitler of Hillbrow. He was seen as being a Robin Hood, as being someone who was, you know, redressing this balance.
But essentially taking from his own.
I think ultimately he was enriching himself. He wasn't a good guy, you know, but certainly in the way he portrayed himself in his personal PR, he saw himself that way, and he tried to perpetuate that myth about himself.
The building has been allowed to decay while the rent has gone up. With immediate effect, your rent will be cut in half.
I just want to also introduce here the producer, Tendeka. Hello, welcome. You're half Zimbabwean?
Half Zimbabwean, half Belgian, yes, yeah.
What was it that compelled you to sort of get involved in this film?
You know, South African cinema had very much, at that time, focused on the history of South Africa, and there were a lot of very important and some very, very good films that were made about that. But I had the feeling that there was an audience appetite for something new, something contemporary, something authentic. And when I read Jerusalema, I felt that, you know, this might just be the project.
She'd found work as a bank teller and a way to make it pay. She'd learned what we all knew. If you want to get by, take a job where there's something to steal.
South Africa has terrible unemployment issues. As you say, the capital of the world, they're saying, in terms of crime. HIV, I think it's the second highest in the world. 1 in 7 South Africans has HIV/AIDS. This is what we hear about South Africa constantly. You didn't want to make a rom-com?
Well, Tendeka went and made a rom-com immediately afterwards, so he must have needed to. Yeah, you know, we hoped we'd make a film which would travel, which would get shown in other countries, and it was just something that was, you know, fascinating and real. You know, I really wanted people to see what inner city Johannesburg was like.
I just wanted to ask about shooting when you're shooting in Hillbrow. What
Yes.
were the logistical or even the security problems, if any?
Tendeka had phoned the Hillbrow police before we went there, and they'd said, no way, don't come here, we don't want to deal with it. But I also felt that if we didn't make this film in the real places, I thought we'd be losing a lot. So we hired a security company, which gave us about 10 guys. The guy who was the head of them had 3 AK-47s and 3 shotguns in the boot of his car. He would have spotters on the buildings looking for trouble. He would send some of his guys plainclothes into the crowd. But also, what happened was we became part of the community in Hillbrow. The extras would be the people who lived in the buildings. If there was manual work, if there was lugging, if we needed to carry things up the steps because there were no lifts, we used the local guys. And so that also brought us in as part of the community. But I think in the end, there's also a lot of luck in nothing bad happening to us.
One of the reference points for you in this film was Heat and Goodfellas. One of the interesting things though that I read was that not only was it an interesting cinematic reference point for you, but you found it was an interesting cinematic reference point for car hijackers.
Yeah, in fact, the scene in Heat was the scene where the cash-in-transit van gets knocked over by another truck and robbed. And what had happened when Heat had come out was there was immediately a lot of very high-quality copycat robberies. Because of all the crime in Johannesburg, every shop, every cinema, every supermarket will have an armored car that comes around and collects their daily takings and takes it to the bank. No one does it themselves anymore. So on a daily basis in Johannesburg now, there's probably every single day at least 4 or 5 cash-in-transit heists where these vans get knocked over and robbed in exactly the way we set out in the film. And that had happened almost immediately after Heat had been released.
Michael Mann was the director of Heat.
Yes.
Did you ever tell him?
Oh no, he saw the film and really liked it.
He saw this film?
Yeah. He was the guy who gave us his blessing to use it.
Really?
Yes,
fantastic.
I was born in Zimbabwe.
Okay.
And I lived my first 5 years of my life in Johannesburg, and that was it, really. So, I mean, for me, it was great to see, because I've never really seen any South African films. I wanted to congratulate you because it was a great film. You had a building explode. Were you just lucky?
No. We were waiting for buildings to be demolished, and when that finally came up, my cameraman went running down with some cameras and shot it.
Great.
But I'll tell you where we were lucky. You see, there's one scene where a taxi comes past and smashes another taxi.
yeah.
People ask how we did it. We turned the camera on. That was lucky.
Finally, I think there was something very kind of Mission Impossible at the end, which made me think sequel.
We'd love to do a sequel, yeah. I think there's a lot of pirates in South Africa hoping we'll do a sequel as well.
Ralph was telling me that he knew the film was huge because it was bootlegged so much.
Well, I was saying it's kind of a strange thing because your film's playing in the cinema and you're driving your car and you pull up at a traffic light and there's a guy selling you a copy of the DVD and he tells you it's a really great movie.
It is a really great movie. Congratulations
Thank you
very
so
much.
much.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for
Ralph
having
Ziman.
us.
Everybody, please thank him for joining us. Gangster's Paradise, Jerusalema. Well, that's it for this fabulous picture show, and I forgot to ask the most obvious question. Jerusalema.
It's the name of a hymn. It's a hymn that his mother is singing in the field near the beginning of the film. It talks about South Africa at the end of apartheid, about this new Jerusalem, about this time of hope.
Wonderful. And it goes like...
You sing it?
You're not going to sing,
I can't do it.
Oh.
I can't even whistle it.
You can't even whistle it? Yeah. Appalling. And you used to direct music videos. Should be ashamed.
That's why.
62.
Damn it, I can't. Yeah, man, I can't. In fact, I can't drive.
How would you rate this film and why?
I rate it a 7 out of 10.
I'd rate this film a 7.
An 8.
No doubt there is some truth in that story, but it didn't give very much context.
It would be very hard to live there, especially in an inner city, to be around that environment constantly.
It's not only educational, but thoroughly entertaining.
Action, editing, sound, everything was just really good, yeah.